just delighted to see everybody here tonight. Isn't this a lovely facility? Isn't it just great? And it's even nicer now with the longer nights because you get to see the view of the pond. Since we are a series, we do have an email list, and so Colleen back there has the email list. Please sign the email list so we can get information out to you, even if you've signed it before, because we do have a few emails that the message came back because of the penmanship originally on the email. So we just invite you to do that. Our series is in part supported by a grant from the Clackamas County Cultural Trust and the Oregon Cultural Trust, so we thank them very much. We have goodies back here. Our poet, Jim, has brought books, so they will be for sale tonight after the reading. There's also a broadside, and I think everyone has gotten a broadside, but if you have not, Colleen will pass them out, or they will be available after the reading. We also are working very hard on extending the series after the grant runs out, which is this June. So we have a feedback form. We'd like to know what you like about the series, how you think it could grow, who you would like to see as the readers as we continue on next year. So it is back there. I'd invite you to take one with you. Please give us some feedback. We'd really like that. The other thing I'd like to call your attention to is that we have some new art up tonight. So I just want you to take a look at that. And the artist is Christopher Bibby. Christopher is here tonight. Do you want to raise your hand back there? There's Christopher. And he has some postcards also on the table where the books are for sale, and he's going to be here and available to talk to people after the reading. So, it gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce our poet tonight. He's the sixth reader in our series. Jim teaches writing, literature, and sustainability at Clackamas Community College. He was born in northeast Ohio, or northwest Ohio. Came to Oregon in 1971, and he tells us that he really remembers living in Ohio and being called west to this great country out here. So that's his experience. He has published extensively in the last 35 years. He has approximately 850 pieces that have appeared in a variety of publications. Those of you that saw the invitation saw a list of them. His 9th and 10th books are Finding the Top of the Sky, Personal Essays, 2004, and October Wind, 2006. And his 1994 Lynx House publication, Poems Rising Out of the Earth and Standing Up in Someone, was awarded the Oregon Book Award in 1995. I've taken several classes from Jim at Clackamas Community College, and I know him to be a graceful poet and an inspiring teacher. So, would you join me in welcoming our poet and reader tonight, Jim Gabrill. Jim?
Tom, thanks for the gracious introduction. Yes, Northwest Ohio was a place where Lake Erie used to extend, and then, you know, when it receded, it left a perfectly flat land. And so when you were living there, anything that was out in the environment was held up in relief against the sky. You know, so billboards, buildings, I mean, perfectly flat. There were a couple hills that were man-made. One was a ski slope at the university, which was just like a little bump, and you know, around here. But you could look down railroad tracks as far as you could see, so it looked like, you know, they extended, you know, to infinity, or you know, something like that. And also, when you looked west, Yeah, I mean, you could see the sun setting on the horizon. There was a feeling of being, kind of pulled to the West Coast that I experienced. A favorite poet of mine is Walt Whitman, and I thought I would begin with just a couple lines from Whitman. There are a couple lines from his Song of Occupations. All architecture is what you do to it when you look upon it. And another one, all music is what awakens from you when you are reminded by the instruments. So those are kind of buried in Song of Occupations. In his book about the ocean, he has this passage. It's a shorter poem, but he's on the beach and he's looking up into the sky. A vast similitude interlocks all spheres, grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planets, all distances of place, however wide, all distances of time, all inanimate forms, all souls, all living bodies, though they be ever so different, or in different worlds. All gaseous, watery, vegetable, mineral processes, the fishes, the brutes, all nations, colors, barbarisms, civilizations, languages, all identities that have existed or may exist on this globe, or any globe, all lives and deaths, all of the past, present, and future. This vast similitude spans them and always has spanned them and shall forever span them and compactly hold and enclose them. I'll be reading some from poems that I've been working on lately and a couple from previous collections. You can feel summer approaching as it gets colder. One of the hallmarks of climate change is that the weather becomes less predictable, right? So here we are. This is originally appeared in Windfall. Before summer begins, it's actually kind of 5 haiku, sort of. All morning, punctuating our talk, workers have been feeding Oregon trees into a yellow grinder. In the neon-lit cafe before finals, another person at a wooden table brags she doesn't like poetry. Later, in the night gymnasium, hundreds of lights flood a man jumping into the open. In the locker room, a beardless man undresses, his back, shoulders, and chest thick with glistening blonde hair. A small woman in a long-flowered skirt tells how she escaped Vietnam in a small boat on the ocean. She was in one of my writing classes at PCC and started telling me her story. It's astonishing. This is called Two Upon Waking, and a number of my poems have sections with different processes going on, and the first part is a dream, and the second is, well, 2 questions. what the reindeer woman knew. Petting a reindeer along her powerful spine makes her groan like a dog, she told me. Then the reindeer woman walked up beside me. Her knit sweater was thick with reds and blues and yellows and dark green, powering the light around her, it felt like. Suddenly we were up in tree houses, back in huge oaks and cottonwoods, maybe we came from, standing on one of the porches from which stairs led into open-sided rooms. Rope ladders swung down in the old growth, an oaken sassafras scent in the rocking, whole neighborhoods in the ancient trees. That was a dream. This is called Late, the second half. How do you face the fall of ice as we know it, the end of a white bear, those scrawny and starving gray whales, the shrinking swarms of plankton with gulleted bugling elephant great heart of continents shot point blank as the cooking heat sinks south and drains north, scouring rains, the piped up and blasted ancient sunlight melting ancient ice. How do you mourn fire we can't measure in finches' wings? The dried out late forest, California tinder flash, sun burning its planets around its circling, its magnetic geopositional violet landings through binoculars in a wild fly's eyes, its green harvested hazelnut in the squirrel's warm mouth, and those millions migrating from drowned cities on ocean coasts of matter when we're going to be gone or still here. I've been influenced by the magazine Windfall. Probably you know it, and a new issue just came out, and they call for poems of place. And a lot of people write about, places outside, places in different locations in the wilderness. I found myself writing about indoor places. So this is called 5 from Portland. Lunch at Flying Pie Pizza. It's the Lake Oswego Flying Pie, by the way. Overhead fans spin over checkerboard tabletops. A man stacks box pizzas by the flat ovens as a woman with one jangling white-shelled earring moves past, her voice down low. The front bell rings, and a person no one sees pushes a platter from the steaming back room. Women in tropical Asian dresses glide to the counter, and a slice is ready for Amy. New groups enter. The hot rod is burning from one poster near another of an immense wave a surfer rides where the ocean still holds, and nearby a woman's red lips glow. Radio shifts to where the break goes, its political exhaust a carbonic blur. China quintuples personal cars, and what are we burning as we sit here? Green peppers plant the green inside the little boys, eating and laughing. The older world fading into the song by The Who, with hungers in control. Or with hungers in control. And then Marco's, winter afternoon at Marco's. If you've ever been there, they have the umbrellas coming down from the ceiling. Some look through the windows at SUVs stopped at the light, passing through Decembers, intersecting this neighborhood, the rare beers from Belgium and England across the way with upside-down umbrellas opened from the ceiling, umbrellas not needed except for beauty, the green beach umbrella, the crimson plaid slightly spinning, the glowing forest branch amber by one, undersea blue and yellow opened in May, umbrellas used to loosen light and shelter. Nearby, neighbors talk over what kept them back or what unfolded, the color lifted into their voices, who they are in the moving, near a mother and grandmother eating together, not saying much, and a man in a flannel shirt sipping soup, already part of who he is in the gray after Oregon light, waited on by a neighbor. The umbrellas sway and spin slightly, a trumpet answering slowness by asking sudden single notes, like porch lights seen from an open yard. Miles Davis in the 50s must be, kissing riffs through the brass for how to feel, fairly ongoing here in the days. And the third part, you probably have been here, the sea lion tank at the Oregon Zoo. You know when you go down and then you look into the water. The larger sea lion flew past underwater, around the rocks, back in the tank, and soared in front of us, her flippers extended, her huge body fluid, her hulk glowing, stretching, and her whiskered face calm, as she circled near and filled almost a third of the massive window. As she came close, my body's skeleton sensed her skeleton, not that different from ours. So I wondered if she knows people watch her, and picture the coast wild with thrashing, where she'd be in the waves if she weren't here. Some of us think this with our weight. With loss, we might not feel directly, and awe for the planet, her effortless swimming and sanctity, the mammalian mind we're still learning to be part of, the red-brown light that glows from her whole body. So she swam by the window that opens on her cove, the children excitedly calling to her, putting their palms on the glass as she passed only feet away, showing us we're small and part of the world passing. A few sea stars on the rock holding it in Pacific time, the sea lion's body drawing us to a place where we can see her. I know she knew we were watching because she came right up to the kids, so it was pretty impressive. Old tunes at the credit union, the teachers' credit union, which is near I-5. As they give people receipts, the tellers glance into the surgical light of the bank lobby. A woman in a pink jacket with a pink fur collar holds her daughter around the shoulders as if something now is becoming lost. Two boys playing with line dividers stand on them as if they could think outside the order. And Frosty the Snowman blares overhead from a 50s recording to remind people to save, perhaps, or to show how we're all children of need. The ripping apart of receipts, click of a purse, the climate controlled, and the ceiling has been transported from a school where we learned to count past commas and numbers. Moments later, the overhead speakers echo with a slow half New Orleans walk, slow dance in a 60s junior high when the girls were strong and soft and we pressed together. away from the teachers watching, as if they needed to recall how children learn at their own rates in the close breathing that goes past our reach, on to industry and weights, answers, and their fulcrum of wonder. In the lobby now, "You make me feel so young" pipes out, with everyone here at the dance in this echoing gymnasium. Now the rumbling hold of a trans-world jet that could land in a single move, or perhaps lift us over the homes of childhood paths where we rode our bikes to school toward the place we've been drawn for over 400 years. And lastly, a poem for home called Winter Home. Vigor passed down through years sets the table heavily with gravy and mashed potatoes, the old weight of rounded shoulders and ways of knowing the winter house with faint starlight from trees alive most of the years. A kiss that knew our lips, its touch of the pelvic bone, the winter rain that flares in cells. Our bodies carry ancestors close, our bodies that stand them into night, the house with its living air, and a ceiling fan erasing their heaviness, unwanted, wood smoke smudging the place, the sun in oxygen and water and green. I wanted to read the broadside. This is beautiful. I love the color. Thank you so much for making this. Giant sunflowers. The head of the old sunflower spirals seeds around thick center and rings its seeds with yellow flares that call to the living, still inside the living. From a drop of dew, the planet sends out gardens. A seed speaks roots and stalk. A voice, its talking mood. The offshore remains of places it's been. The throat talk of a fleet docking. The summer fogs lifting from Pacific Northwest rainforest ferns and blackberry pungent on many slopes of speech. Sun releases raw regard. The acetylene torches shaded in a work clock. Ocean freighters anchored today along the Federal Superfund River in what still looks like beauty, exuding fish scent through concrete city roots, cooking up will in a future Oregon come to pass. From inside the vertical sway of branches, where we always are, the moonlight of efforts lost, sphered, coast of breath, lifting and releasing, sun in each molecular core, the debris of faults, in wind from afternoon wheat swaying a road, as sunflowers show this chance to rise up and walk. At least they look like they could. I mean, you look at them, and they look, their faces. Sometimes I jump over passages, by the way. This is in the current windfall and has been deemed a poem that touches on peak oil. I think it has become harder to not include, some of the predictions regarding what we've done to the planet, in poems. So, from the front room. The afternoon is dark when seen from this lit-up room. The Pacific letting loose more of itself this way. The Columbia River punching ahead faster than a train under downtown steel bridges. The washing machine in the back room whirs and shakes against the wall, loosening our clothes in Bull Run water. The Columbia powering the motor from its massive dam, still holding back the whole river, the years of fishing buried under water behind it. As the machine whirls, 100-foot blades in the gorge take the wind down into neighborhoods. One sound before all others, winter wind. Stairways down to the beach will measure rising planetary water. Rivers fed by glaciers will flood, then thin. Countries where people wash and river water already are blurred by atmospheric heat. Does public water belong to the public? War statues stand a mile high on the mountain of debt. The end of days wears me out as dominionists knock at our laws, and octopi are waking slowly through their millennia. Mountain gorillas with our faces from a past, burned from crisp pages of a new geographic. The backroom washer roars on its spool as storm changes over the continent. Down here the months still sound like birds and rain, like grasses shaking and a pickup starting. The way we see one another when we look, everything we witness, we know it's interwoven, part of the sun, planted its centers of matter. It's sun from outside and inside, growing a pepper. It's sun from inside and outside, healing a wound. Seen from inside river water, stones, solid light, form X round until it's a round, vibrating from centers of cells. The sun's birds make a music, shattering thoughts into waves and opening the wind's long door. The shells of ocean turtles and shells of plankton dissolve in carbonic acid, the ocean having inhaled too much CO2. Thick oil-smeared damages sprawl behind ships. Bent sunflower heads feed what comes from other roots of the sun. This is a found poem from Scientific American. I was reading Scientific American, and just a little, details started jumping out. They seemed as if, if you collected them, you could call it a poem. So this pretends to be called State of the Art. Found in the December 2007 issue of Scientific American. Green sea turtles, from the moment of hatching, eat meat, such as jellyfish, and then a few years later, switch to seagrass. Duke researchers have shown broken down testosterone in male sweat smells stale to one person and like sweet flowers of vanilla to the next, or like nothing at all to another person. Bacteria can live in salt lakes, acidic mine tailings clogged with heavy metals, and in waste pools of nuclear reactors. The Murchison meteorite that struck Australia in 1969 contained amino acids not common to our form of life. Now scientists drilling into the Earth's core are looking for life as we know it and for alien life. Hope they let us know what they find. It's true though, I guess. At Harvard, a mouse's brain was photographed, the individual axons of the wiring colored by use, revealing beauty of simplest thought. They had the photographs, they're just beautiful. The gamma ray spectrum, invisible to us, contains the most dramatic cosmic events: star explosions, black hole collisions, and more. An immense gamma ray telescope launched this spring is set to measure dark matter that holds galaxies together. So we can wait to hear what they have to say. I've been writing explorations that I think of as fractals, as being built on fractals, and so they kind of spiral along sort of a curved arc. And this is one of the shorter ones. It's called Fractals from a Feather. In the afternoon, a blue jay gusting parallel to your suddenly skeletal frame in a summer after rushing of wind, hurrying of light, the wires of working after the need, and the need that wires have been fixing after the lamps mushrooming and solid stone had held when the cliff was raw, a soothsayer smoke back before Athens, a cat in your body with long inherited belief in reincarnation before thinking, but not enough to give up your reign. Eating the animal's grief, each lung and gill, a full-throated call slid into quadruple sheer bank numbers, feeding some network search detailed for the picture that fits the current, worth 10 times itself, it thinks, against itself. Just ask it by how it contains what it isn't, the nausea of petrochemicals, the chance to see a live coyote, and ocean waves on the shore as vast, mind-swept vistas through the galaxy it takes 1 billion years to show us, with Earth circling as it does in the living who prosper by who knows how it was going to be, the packed bus submerged by moving, the muffled, expounding, exhaling, heart-beating, unknown evening, where we are everything the plums light up or the celery applies its hydraulics, similar to cores of apples pointing to the ocean, and rhinos and moss and Moses spreading bones over the snow from inside crystal that looks as if forgotten school had been seen from the shuttle, with distant galaxies beheld through DNA Hubble, the resilient light heightening the body of the tree. The body knows pretty clearly the world, how you give it a place around you, all you can do in the midst of how the world opens and closes as you work and relax, with scent of long hair and blackberries, the steel frames shuddering from sudden ginger, phantom old world, rustling rainwater outside and in, and continually the human face is born. and how you know which question you must compose for the heat after day stopped being a barge on the Nile. Will the wood blossom scent be realized as part of breathing the body does? Will holding what movement releases become giving away what isn't in the motion? Through unraveling is weaving. And through distancing, you might find closeness leveling, peeking out, a secrecy of personal radio, summer which has zeros, hearkening root shade, and disciplinary, muscular trying in the whispering of sources, the daylit horses glowing from mineral caverns, and still the plants grow, spinning as night sky galaxy groundingly spins, drinking root light the buffalo drank, where nothing can be done that isn't both trying and letting go, divided into what the ocean knows to talk about better than language, the flames of your inner sun, one of the answers to slow maple, the silver bell, inaudible now, insinuating from a gone century. Another poem of place on Broadway. The man in a print shirt and tan shorts took off dark glasses, touching his nose, and slid them into his shirt pocket, his eyes forward, the steel ordering counter shrouded by machinery. I don't see him again. Two men in African show me we've gone to Ethiopia. The imported rug on the floor, rosemary, Clooney now black overhead, the charred ancient fern forests in the air, but I know I'll forget about it soon again. Now another singer tries to hold on to something that keeps leaving her, a kid who could be somebody's great-grandchild off, letting the cars go, waiting at the light. Along this street, you can buy a quart in the grocery and stand outside your zinc hut. One man is clearly a doctor who traveled here to obtain medical supplies, the extra in our pockets, heating up with 1/6 in world poverty, 1/6 of us at the African table, some talking we've gone to, far away. There goes the man in the bomber jacket, releasing his silhouette in the front window. The part of him in Ethiopia struggling to hold a quarter, and the part sitting here to be here. This is a halfway a found poem. It's called The Muscular Heart. The muscular heart pumps its elephant rumble at once to tiniest vesicles in lunar backwaters and stays its spines plumb. Dylan delivered Knocking on Heaven's Door to the Pope in '97. By gluing discarded plastic caps, exquisite Hoffman sculpted a pharaoh that was at the Denver Natural History Museum. After the MS hit, my dad kept teaching by riding to class in a cart. The heart is muscular, opening and closing and strongly standing. In '02, anthracite fields, workers struck for fair pay and hours. Starting in 1848, Stanton demanded equality for women. At one with its own birth, the dark red muscular heart makes what it reaches. O'Keeffe drove a Model A and painted on the Ghost Ranch. In the late 40s, Maestro Bernstein conducted in Tel Aviv and Prague. The heart takes its sound to its cells and maneuvers its navies to internal landing of a hawk feather, and the heart is not usually afraid for its life as the future arrives. Let's see, I want to read two more. Avoid global warming and peak oil. This is called Fall of the Rain and Sun. In each book breaking, withdrawing down through sands, in quiet foaming, the back on land leaves a jungle of crucifixes. Comes the nuclear consent of the governed. And are we ready for the forward change that will take us back? Do the texts of discovered stone teach how a future towers once again off the coast in fog? The flank of brown pelicans forever passing a few feet over the water, escaping extinction, the disparate particles woven together by waves for which sun stops being a father, the blazing brain in the universe, and a country with wealth fewer each moment might own, each plant of solar holdings. And how long will we keep calling where we are what we have, and what we've seen all we've seen? The white waves rushing in our petroglyphic shift, the eyes glowing from blue fall of rain, however we might ask or explain work that ties us down to what we've been offered, what we've been able to offer, shaped through atmospheric reaches, grasp, moving as if light were continuing birth in a blink of matter, where evening goes, perhaps before remembering how generous the place has been. Where is this? I brought a broadside that was made by Lost Horse Press. It's back on the table. It's blue and white, and we laminated a couple, and I wanted to read the poem that's on that as an ending poem. If I can find it. Table of contents. It's always good. There it is. Yeah, okay. And this is called This Breath Reaches Us from the Future. In the backyard, blue jays land from an unseen future. They return for us, luminous, shaded, like athletes on a day off. No, like strong sisters who never bought into social Darwinism. Or like spirit men from Peruvian heights, breathing air full of light and darkening, folds and unfolding, trunks and wing flashes. As breathing arrives from the future, fir trees hold the earth in the sky. And some of our people go under, kayaking down with Ernst in the undersea, pulled there by cost or meaning, by wheels of origin, sparking, by crossing, spiraled runes, flaming root-hold and mothering leaves, whale heads on ancient decks, the peacock fans and nailed coins, nearly invisible. But blue jays stop easily on the ground. The blue and shadows glow. The future is energetic when it lands here, and even when it is gone. It was a real honor to be able to read here. Thank you for coming.
So we have time for questions. You'd like to take questions?
Sure. Unless it's about Scientific American. I'd rather not.
Okay. Well, I would like to ask you to talk about writing. And
The process.
yeah, that's part of it. So that's one question. Also, how and when did you know you were a writer?
Okay. I grew up, with my parents being musical teachers, music teachers, and we listened to a lot of music, and I started playing a trombone, fourth grade. We were pretty bad, and and I put a lot into it and got a lot out of it. And when I went to college, it just didn't seem like trombone playing was going to lead in much of a direction. But so that was one kind of influence. Another was we went to the Presbyterian church, and we had a minister who was quite thoughtful, I thought. He would take passages, from the Bible and explore them and look at ethical issues, and there was an emphasis on music and also on say the Psalms and various kinds of word poetry, the poetry from the Bible in the church. And then so that's another factor. In high school, my senior year, I remember running into T.S. Eliot, and for some reason, I don't know why, it just seemed like he was using language in a way that I just hadn't thought of, and it just seemed so right. And I realized it was kind of a symbolic language that was new. It was speaking in the moment and not in a coded way about a land halfway around the world, and it seemed very real. And so I ran into modern poetry, and then I just kind of wanted to start writing. So I started writing then. So T.S. Eliot. And then my aunt sent a book of translated Chinese and Japanese first, yeah. Japanese poems by Rexroth. It was wonderful. And so that was a big influence too. And I've always seen then the writing process as kind of a meditative process. It's a process of gathering energy and adjusting and tuning and making music that grounds me as a person, and so it's a critical part of my life, and I see it as something I've always worked it into my schedule, and so it's a part of the work week for me. And I've written myself, I think, out of bad moods more than a few times, and various writing for me is a way of expressing, exploring, and getting grounded. But actually, I have found more and more that I rewrite. I don't know if the writers in here, if you do this a lot, I think we all do, but I find myself rewriting and returning to old material and working it up again in new ways. And I forget where some images came from, some can come from different sources. So I've noticed that more when I was younger, I used to think the moment of writing was the moment of the poem, and the poem was in the moment and was, you know, it was very important, and now I don't see it that way. That was probably more than you asked.
Do you write longhand or do you write computer?
Both. And I did an experiment. I realized I needed to get more, I wanted, that is, to get more just perception into my writing. And so I took notepads to cafes, the Flying Pie, Marco's, and other places, and the credit union, and many others that aren't as clear. Anyway, so usually though, for a very long time, I composed on a typewriter. Had a Underwood. And then got an electric typewriter and composed on that because it could keep up with your thinking. And the Underwood was really, you know, slow, but then you had to feel what you were saying or you wouldn't stay with it. But, and so then I started thinking the electric typewriter maybe let me be a little glib, you know. And then the computer, you know, of course, even faster. But I think there is a tendency to just let words fly in, you know, if you can type as fast as you're able. So I did go back to handwriting. Do you handwrite? Or?
No, for some reason I just wondered.
Yeah.
You said you write and rewrite and rewrite.
Yes.
I just wondered if you
When I revise, I use the computer.
yeah.
Yes, and so I have, yeah, keep the, you know, it's the filing is so much easier. Used to have a big stack of pages, and it was a little harder to work with. I think it can be a lot more productive on a computer. Yeah.
So kind of more productive on a computer, but more creative, pen and ink.
I think I allow myself to be more real, maybe, with, yeah, pen and or pencil and yellow pad, maybe. I don't know how others have experienced it, but I think maybe it's that.
Well, to your earlier comment, I'm someone who's born to be in the audience for poetry, not in the writing. But poetry often, for me, is useful in going into meditation or being in a kind of bad place in the mood and then pulling out. So it's
Yes.
interesting to hear you describing it from the writing point of view. And I think maybe
Yes.
the pen and ink when you're in that meditative place as opposed to when you're moving into the editor, creator, artist, maybe the meditative place is the thing. I don't know. But
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that in revising, though, it's a new moment. Revising is a new moment, and I mean, Underwood made a person, you know, retype the whole thing. You had to start over, so you had to retype it and think it all the way through. I try to do that when I'm revising, but I don't know if I do. But it does still feel like a heightened moment, as far as, you know, the language is heightened compared to, you
so
know.
you still have that meditative
I
sense
think.
or that, okay.
Yeah, a kind of more symbolic place.
It is interesting to kind of know, at least, and I don't know, I can't speak for the broad poetry audience, but for this person to hear you on the other side kind of sending that out, you know, and receiving it that way. So it's interesting.
I think that's why I read other, you know, other books too. I agree with you, yeah. From meditative learning or exploration. Yeah.
You mentioned the different things that affect you about music and a particular ministry that could really pull from the Bible and
Yeah.
the Book of Psalms. And by rereading the Bible, I'm back in that giant print King James, back so many things, so many moods, and the poetry is so beautiful.
Mhm.
So I can see where this would be, these things would be
You know,
influential.
when we were kids, you know, we went to the church service after Sunday school, and so took that in. Yeah. And hymns, too. But yeah. So you're reading the King James Version?
I had one of those giant print ones, just my own time with it, and
Yeah,
some things when there's no one telling you,
yeah,
you know, how to put it in context or any of that other stuff.
Yes.
You're just looking at it for what is there and how
yeah,
it could speak to you. Is that, I guess,
yeah.
I'm wondering how come at a different point you can read something, say in the Bible that you know you've read before, but now you see it more. And it takes whatever we go through in life before we can see. I don't know why that is, I just noticed that.
And I think Eliot and Merwin and, you know, other writers work that same way or a similar way. You know, their language works in that way. By the way, our minister's daughter became a lit teacher and used to teach the Bible as lit. Which, rather than scripture.
You probably answered this, but what are the poets that have influenced you the most? Have you listed them all?
There have been, you know, various key figures for me, but Eliot and modern writers, there have been a few, you know, when I was just learning, there were a few anthologies that were quite important. One was called Modern Poetry. It had Eliot, Yeats, and Auden, and Pound, but I never could understand Pound. And there was another one called Naked Poetry. Has anybody seen that? You know, with...
And the New Naked Poetry.
yes, the two.
Yeah, those are great books.
Aren't they?
Stephen Bird.
Yeah, Berg and Maisie. Yeah, and Stafford, you know, was in that book, and his poems were, geez, really helpful, you know, or resonant. Rutke, I love his North American sequence. Also the Lost Son, longer poems, and Meditations of an Old Woman, and then the shorter ones. And then also Robert Bly and the Surrealists and Neruda, and it seemed that they were writing about the unconscious in ways that various poets maybe weren't, and so they were writing from the whole person a little bit more. You know, at one point I felt that, and so Robert Bly, I think I read every essay he put out in an interview, you know, because he seemed like he just made a lot of sense. And, James Wright, Gary Snyder. Heard Gary Snyder read in 1971 and 1975. One of those was right after he had published Regarding Wave, and he sang a couple, you know, the Blue Jay, or no, Magpie, I think, Magpie song he sang, and it was quite shaman-like. Ginsberg on the page. Let's see, Philip Levine, Galway Canal, I think is probably one of our best poets. I mean, you know, if you have to say that, but he's so wonderful. Once I was at a reading where he was reading from the Book of Nightmares. This was at PSU, and the Vietnam War was in these poems, and he had this pilot being shot down in this one passage, and a guy, like 2 tables from where we were, had an epileptic seizure right then when the pilot was shot down. And I mean, it didn't surprise me, although it was horrifying, but it just seemed like that was the power he kind of had. You know, Cannell, when he was, like, that was around 19, he read with Levine, early 70s. He's still wonderful. We heard him downtown Portland 5 years ago or something. Etheridge Knight, you know, the way he put music to, you know, he played the talking drum. Was anybody at the Poetry Festival back, might have been 78 or 9, Portland? He had the talking drum, then afterwards there was a party, and he was playing the talking drum out in the front yard. But many poets, I think Stanford, the way he uses language, you know, he taps into multiple meanings and inner meaning, and through understatement finds resonance that is so different from, say, Robert Bly writing in surreal images, you know, back in Teeth Mother, Naked at Last, or something. Anyway, those, I guess the modern poets are really, and so the usual suspects, you know, from the Norton Anthology, E.E. Cummings, you know, various writers who just are strong. And then Whitman,